I don't see one where it'll like take little pieces and fly them around. I don't think so. I don't know. Let's see what this hatch does. So you have to then size it. Sort of pay attention to these. Like if I want a 1 second overlap, then I say, okay, I'm going to bump this up to 3, and this ends at 4. So that'll give me about a second. And then you can drag this transition around, and you want to sort of bump it up against that first edge, and then to resize it, you go to this tool, the resize tool, and then you can grab this far left edge of it and drag it and sort of drop it. It will sort of stick to the end of things if you have this magnet enabled, snapping, and it helps you line it up with that back edge there. So the other thing you have to pay attention to is this arrow in a transition. It says move from this clip into this clip. So in this case it's pointed in the direction we probably want. And if we drag across there, you can see the effect up above, going forward and reverse. If you get that arrow backwards, you can reverse it by right-clicking on the transition and say switch direction. So now we're saying move from the upper clip into the lower, which doesn't make a lot of sense here, but it's going to jump, and then at the end it'll jump again. So you can see it's all messed up, and you'll be like, what the heck is wrong with that? Oh yeah, the arrow. So that's how you do a transition. Another useful thing on these is if you right-click on a clip down here and say fade, there are pre-built fade in and fade out, so it'll fade from black in or out, or both. I usually use a fast, which I think is a 2-second fade, and I think slow is 4 seconds. But that's really easy to get a fade on these things. That one actually happened to already have a fade in it. Yes. The fade? Yeah. The fade is on a clip. It's actually part of the clip. You can look at this clip and go to properties, and you can find out a lot of information about it. You can disable the audio or the video in that clip individually. So if it's got sounds and you don't want the sounds, you could just disable it here. You don't have to strip it out some other way. You can look at the length. So on a title screen or something, you can say, all right, I want the title to sit there for 5 seconds or 3 seconds. You can just adjust that right here. So if I want a shorter title, I can just say, all right, it's going to be 3 seconds. And when I apply it, it cuts it back. And it'll do that on other clips too, not just title clips. But I think it makes the most sense in the title clip. You can adjust the speed, so you can actually speed things up or slow them down in here. And you can do direction. I actually had not noticed that before. I'll have to try that. I haven't done much with the layout. I'm not sure what all that does. And then you can adjust the audio properties in here. If one clip's too loud, you can just pull this back until it's the right volume, until it sort of matches in with the rest of it. And you can choose to fade in and out the audio separate from the video. So if you want the audio to just jump in, you can turn these fades, and the video will still fade in as the audio jumps in. I don't know, but I'm not sure what that is.
When you put different volume levels, takes them and makes them all the same, so you don't have a jump from low volume to high volume.
So does it do normalization? I don't know. I don't think it does. I've always gone in and adjusted them manually here. And the same with video, you can choose to turn the fades on or off here, and this is the length of the fades. You can do various things. I haven't messed around a lot with these, so I'm not exactly sure what they do. And I'm not sure what the effects are either. There's a lot of stuff in here that I haven't played with yet. But you can adjust all those properties for each individual clip. So now I've messed up my transition here. I can drag this back over, and I can drag this. And you have to resize these quite a bit if you resize things to get them to line up.
Adjust the volume, is that like an absolute volume control, or if you were to put the number the same on one side than the other, but wouldn't have?
No, because it's a percentage. If you look at the properties, in the audio, you're just taking 100. So right now it's at 100%. And all you can do is lower it. Say, okay, I want it half as loud. Yeah, so you can't just say I want them all at this volume. That would be pretty nice. All right, so we got those. Content.
So when you're working with the clips, you got the interaction.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have intro low, the other one that.
You don't have to for some things. Like in this case, if I were to swap these around, if I had this one, if I had it like this, it would still work fine as long as I, and then I got to reverse the transition, and it'll be fine. So now it's going in this clip, and then it'll transition down to this one. Where that really comes into play, where they're stacked on top of each other properly, is in credits and scrolling text. I'll show you that. So let's say, line these up right again. Not that it matters too much. Let's say I want to scroll some text along the bottom of this, or put up a title or text in there. It's actually called a title. So you go to Title, New Title, and these are a lot of title screens that are built in. So there's various bars, there's bubbles, clouds, there's all this fun stuff. So these footers are the ones that we usually play with. Footer 2 will put it in the center of the screen. So if I want to put up, something that's one screen wide or less of text, so just a few words, that's a good one to use. If I have something I want to scroll across the screen, you have to pay a lot more attention to it. Use footer 1. Actually, sort of depends on which direction you want it to scroll across. So footer 1 is good for a left to right scroll. And then we say, once you've selected your title type, you hit Create New Title. And we'll just call this, scrolling text 1. You can name it whatever you want it. It'll turn it into a clip in your project files. And then this is the actual text that we want to show up. So we'll say, here's George falling asleep. Apply. And you can change some colors in here. It's kind of tricky because it'll, like this white background will sort of show through a little bit. All this stuff around the edges is transparent, but it can be a little tricky to get those colors right. If I just hit apply, what it's done is created a clip over here. And you can see the colors are kind of weird. But then you take that and you put it down here just like any other clip. So now it's above this one. If I grab my bar here, you can see that pops on there. And that's because it's above. If we do this in the wrong order, so if we have our main clip, if we have our transparent one below the main clip, and it doesn't show up, that's because it's behind it. This bottom clip is actually behind the top clip, so you don't see it at all. When you get it in the right order, then you get that the one with the transparency is on top of the main one. So it's just layers, like a transparency. If you get them in the right order, you're all set. And it's really important if you want to scroll text across. So I'm going to remove this clip, and we'll make a new title and just do sort of a scrolling text. That one barely fits on the screen in one go. So if it gets bigger, you have to move it across the screen. So you title, new title. Come over here, we'll grab footer 1, and create it. We'll call this, let's call this scrolling 1. And this is really tricky. I wish this was a lot easier to do. You have to sort of play with it to get it to line up right. So I've got a title that's probably too long. You can see here it goes off, but that's not necessarily the same size as your screen. So now we got our scrolling 1. If we throw that down there, we play. See if I can make this a little bigger. I don't. There we go. So you can see it's just cut off, and it never goes anywhere. So to make it actually move, so we can see the whole thing, you have to right-click on it and go to Animate. And say, I want this to move from left to right. There we go. Or do I want it right to left? I don't know. Let's see. So now I've animated just this clip. Now it'll move across the screen. So I really wanted it to go the other way, didn't I? Okay, animate, I want it to go right to left. Do that. There we go. So now, but you can see it's still cut off. It doesn't show the whole thing, right? That's the tricky part. If we go back in here and edit the title, we have to sort of play with this and say, alright, I don't even get all of the off, so I got to cut this out of here and apply it. So now I've changed that one. So as it goes, it just ends at goes. But I want the rest of that to show up somewhere. What do I have to do? Well, what I have to do is make a new track, which is this plus sign here. So now I've got 3 tracks. Let's shrink this back up a little bit. Okay. I actually need to make another title. I'll use the footer 1 again. And name it scrolling 2. You can name these whatever you want, of course, but it's easier to give it a number if you need to keep track of that. And just put the rest of that in there. Okay, so now I've got scrolling 2. And you overlap them. If we put them end to end, well, first I got to animate this one too. So right click, animate, right to left. Okay, so if we scrub through this real quick, that one goes and goes and goes and goes off the edge, and then this one comes in. Now that's not what we want. We want it to come up against each other. So you have to drag this over and overlap them, and it's a little bit of guesswork. So I recommend you do these at the end once you got everything else set, because if you start moving things around, then you got to go back through and try to reshuffle all these. It's really kind of a pain. But now my gap is a little too big there. I think it doesn't look right. So bump this over a little more, and there we go. That's pretty close. Now if you go too far, so if I'm over here, now this one is on top of this one, it's going to start blocking. So there we go. You can see what's happened there. They're on top of each other and getting messy. So you really just got to place that thing right, and then that's about the best you can do. Yeah, there isn't a good... It is. It's a workaround. I'm sure someday they'll get a better one where you can just type in a long thing and scroll the whole thing across like you'd expect to be able to do.